Hey, so Stephanie subbing from Quiltatics Anonymous here, and
Angela from the Angela and the Unicorn.
And it is October, which means it's time to make your what?
Halloween costume.
And who are you going to be this year?
Clara.
Clara from the Nutcracker. So this is our inspiration pattern. So I found this pattern from the early 2000s. We are going to be working with it as our main shape, but we are going to Franken pattern it. We're going to make it fitted. We've discussed some sleeve length alterations from some Google images that we saw online that you really liked. So we're about to go into Joann's and see if we can find some fabric. We've decided we want to do some fun lace stuff and maybe some lace overlay.
Yeah, we talked about it the whole drive here.
Are you excited?
Yes.
All right, let's go shopping.
Obviously. This is 900. This is gonna be 900.
Yeah, that looks like organza. So this might be for your sleeves?
Yes.
What about this one right down here?
Let's try it. This and this combined. Just look at that.
That does look pretty good.
Yeah. Try to their shape. Rainbow fluff.
Maybe we can grab it as a possibility. What do you think?
It's a yes.
So Angela, we could do this one here for going around the cuff of your sleeves and also this part up here.
Okay.
It
Buckles on
makes
it.
it look blue when you put it over it. So do we want to do this right down the center?
Yes.
So the first thing I want to do is sketch out the alterations that I plan to make to this pattern. I'm going to keep the neckline as is because that's what kind of makes it look like a nightgown. I also am going to be keeping the ruffled trim going along both sides of this. Now here's where the differences are going to start to come in. We are going to do a high waist sashing here. And we're going to have a little ribbon going across the center of it. Now this is going to be a little bit more billowy here because we're going to have a lot of gathered material. Widen that out a little bit. Make it a little more poofy, like it'll look in real life. And then our sleeve is going to end here. And just like here, we're going to use the same ribbon here. And this sleeve is going to be a lot poofier. All right, here's where everything is going to change quite a bit. We're going to keep the hemline to just below the knee. Down here, I think we're going to do a double ruffle. We'll put this on, but then I also have another larger ruffle to go underneath to really make it fun. Now once I have this done, just to make it extra pretty and so I can go in this really well with an eraser, I like to take a fine tip Sharpie and go over my lines. Now I'm going to go ahead and color this in. And here we have it, our inspiration and what we're going to attempt to Franken pattern it into. So the very first thing I'm doing here is I am tracing out my original pattern onto some pattern tracing paper. This comes in a lot of formats. I prefer this non-woven material. It's kind of feels like an interfacing, but it is specifically meant for this. Sometimes it's called Swedish tracing paper. So it's not like paper. It definitely, like, you can even sew through it if you want, but it's a really easy way for me to be able to transfer the markings. As I found, as I've had, you know, second children, that sometimes I wanted to remake a pattern and then I don't have the original size anymore because I've cut the bits off. So what I can do here is I can transfer all of my markings from the small, and I can say what it is on here. and I'm really easily able to preserve the original pattern without cutting into it. So I'm going to continue doing this for all the pieces. This one I don't have to make any adjustments to, but I will be making adjustments to a couple of the other pieces. I'll pop back when I get to that point. Here's where some of those pattern adjustments are going to come into place. So for the version that I'm doing, we're going to have a 3/4 length sleeve, and I wanted to stop at the forearm. So I did a measurement of the shoulder to the forearm, which is 11 inches. And I also have my neck to shoulder, which is 4.5 inches. So I need to have 15.5 inches from this neck to where this sleeve is going to be. So I have already measured the distance of that neck seam. And so that's from here to here, but we have a 5/8 of an inch seam allowance to account for there. So it's actually going to be 1.5 inches smaller than that. It's going to be 2 5/8 will be taken up, so I can like physically put that above. So now I know kind of where is actually where it attaches, so we can measure from there. And then I can measure from the top of this to make sure that I'm getting the full amount that I need. So we need 15.5 inches. So right here is where the end of my sleeve needs to be, but we're gonna have to remember our seam allowance. So that's 5/8 of an inch. So that's actually going to be here is where I want that to be. Actually, we need to add a whole 1.5 inches on top of this because we're going to eat up 5/8 of an inch here and down here when we add the cuff. So let's add another 5/8 of an inch, 15.5. So basically 17 inches. So this is where the end of my seam needs to be. So now I can just take a straight ruler, mark across, and continue tracing to get my sleeve length. Now I'm going to test this with a muslin before I make it for real, but this gives me a good indication of where things need to be just using some simple math. One other thing I forgot to do, this originally is to cut 1, and since I'm changing it to cut 2 so I can have a zipper here and a gathered waist, I need to also add in my 5/8 of an inch seam allowance at the center back, so that way I can make sure that everything fits nicely. So I'm going to do that first by extending my line. I can go across here. It's pretty straight. So now I need to make a couple of custom pieces. The original pattern calls for elastic here, and what I want to have is actually a cuff with a button on it, and then I can put this overlay over it. So what I want to do first is measure the width of my trim, and that is about 1.5 inches wide. So that would make a great finish size because then I can just stitch it straight down and it'll cover the cuff really nicely. So that means I need 3 inches for the front and back, plus another 1.5 inches for my seam allowances. So I need something that's going to be 4.5 inches wide. So now I'm going to look at my forearm circumference. That's just 6.5 inches. So we're going to add again 1.5 inches seam allowance on either side. So that gets us to 8. Plus I want to have 1 inch overlap. So we're going to say 9 inches. And again, I'm going to test all this, but I think that's a pretty good starting point. And it just occurred to me that I probably don't want to make it exactly the inch. I probably want to give myself a little bit of room here too. Let's go ahead and give ourselves an extra 1/2 inch. So I'm just going to extend that just a bit. So this circle skirt is going to be one of the more complicated adjustments that I'm making to this. Technically it's just math, but it's not math that I do very often as a quilter. So I want to create a double circle skirt, which will create the most flounce and twirliness when she's spinning around in this, which a ballerina needs. So what I need to do is take her waist measurement and divide that by 1/4. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to up this to 21 inches because I want her to have a little bit of ease in there. So that gives me 5.25. So when I divide that by pi, I get 1.67. So I'm going to round that up to 1 1/4 because then that's going to give me a little bit of ease to work in here, and I feel like that's a good thing, and I think we'll be good from there. So from there, what I do is I basically start drawing a right angle, and then I'm going to mark that 1.67 going around 1 1/4. And when I'm done with that, I'm going to then mark down about 19 inches from there to get the skirt length I need. I'm accounting for 2 inches in our waistband as well for that. And then when I'm all said and done, I want to go in and add in that 5/8 seam allowance at the top of my circle. And because I'm doing a double circle skirt, what I need to do is actually cut this twice. And then that's going to give me the correct amount to go around, and the waist should fit. So I finished my muslin, which is what it sounds like. It is a mock-up of the dress made of cheap fabric, in this case, actual muslin. My goal is to see, one, if my alterations to the pattern are going to work, give me an idea of some good ways to do some of these finishing touches, like this cuff sleeve. And then also in the morning, I'm going to try it on my actual daughter and make sure that my alterations, in fact, fit. There's a lot of things that are not finished in here, like I didn't do any of my seam finishes the way I normally would. There's no lining on any of this. There's no interfacing. This is literally just to get a feel for the shape of the dress, test putting it together, make sure that it is in fact going to fit on the actual body. I don't know if you guys have ever had a sewing problem keep you up at night, but this was happening to me, and I'm so glad I came down to my sewing studio to figure it out. So there's supposed to be a lot of gathers up here, but instead when I sewed it together, all the gathers were in the armpit. That is the weirdest thing. What is going on? So I came in and I actually pinned my pieces together. So I've got my sleeve here and my front and my back. And I realized what the problem was. I put, you can see right here, this is the cut on the fold mark. It's on the wrong side. This is the sleeve side. I should have put it over here. So that's where I screwed up. That's why this thing looks super weird. But otherwise, I'm really happy with everything is at the moment. But this is why you make a muslin, because God forbid I would have screwed this up in the real fabric. That's way more expensive than the muslin. I would be in tears, and it probably would never get finished, and I would feel horrible about Halloween and ruining it for my daughters. And now we get to move on to the real deal after we do a fitting tomorrow morning. But for now, I'm gonna go to bed because it's like midnight, and this literally, like, I could not go to sleep until I figured this out because I knew I'd screwed something up and I wasn't quite sure how. So we have the answer. We can move forward. Okay, so I've done one more thing that I know is just gonna drive me crazy unless I figured it out tonight before I went to bed. So I have this flouncy trim that's gonna go all along the bottom of the skirt. I was pretty sure I did not have enough. So I started at the seam line and just started pinning. I have 3 yards of this that I bought, and it does not even make it halfway around. So I definitely am going to need probably at least 8 more yards of this, plus like probably 10 more yards of this little trim, because that's going to go around all the cuffs, and it also is going to layer over the top like that to create kind of a double trim situation. It's going to be gorgeous with the fabric that my daughter and I picked out, but I don't have near enough. I think it's fitting. Also, we're gonna work back here.
Big.
It is big. It's gonna be maximum spinning potential. All right, give me a spin. So we passed the fit test. There's definitely a little bit of extra room in there, which is perfect because she's a kid. She can wear it as she grows. and still get some more use out of it other than just one day. And so I'm pretty excited. I'm ready to actually cut into the real fabric. What I did today, once I finished cutting everything, was I also took the time to go ahead and pin together my layers. So the sheer shiny fabric, or the sparkly fabric that's kind of the outer fabric for the body of the dress, is a little sheer. So we have this flowy, floofy lining to go underneath it. So I decided I'm not going to do heirloom sewing techniques on this. I'm going to just go ahead and serge all of my edges, just to make it faster, because I also have to make a costume for my younger daughter, and then I have work sewing projects, so I can't just do this all week and do heirloom sewing, although I would love to. That would be really, really fun. But time is going to make the decision here. So what I did today was I pinned together anywhere where I needed interfacing, and all this fabric is, even though it was not cheap, it was in fact like completely polyester, so I cannot use an iron on any of it. I have to sew in all of the interfacing. So I pinned all that in, and then I've also pinned in the lining where necessary, so that way when I sit down tomorrow night at the sewing machine, I'm able to just go around and baste all those edges together, and then I can start sewing. Look.
Oh, what? You finished it.
What do you think?
I love it.
Yeah? Is it what you imagine?
Yeah, exactly. I saw the Clara costume yesterday at dance, and it looked exactly like this.
Really? It was fun to make.